Jane,
Hi,
how are you this morning?
fantastic. Thank you. Lovely sunny weather. Always a good time to start.
No kidding. Well, and you have a different accent, and you're saying it's lovely weather. Where in the world is Jane Hales?
I am currently in London, and London doesn't have sun that often, so I'm loving it. So
I
yeah, it's
know.
towards the end of our day at the moment, so it's a good time to talk.
Yeah, well, that's great. And I'm glad to have you here because the perspective you're going to bring us today is not only a global perspective, because you're bringing one from Europe, but you're going to talk to us about women.
Well, yes.
Trust me, we're all ears.
Okay.
And,
Thank you.
uh,
A
yeah,
big subject, a big subject, that one, isn't it?
it's about grade 3 in school that
Okay,
boys figure out we don't know what's going on with girls and we
okay,
tread lightly. But today, you own a research company
I do. Yeah,
and you have insights into not only the psyche of women, but businesses and how people make decisions at an individual or a company level. And so that's what we're going to pick into your brain today, right?
indeed, yes, thank you. Yeah, I've been in the market research industry now for about 25 years or so. And I do a lot of research around audience understanding. So, who your customer is, how to sell to them, where to find them, what makes them tick, that kind of thing.
Mm,
What, the brand, what do they think of your brand? You against competitors, why would they choose you against somebody else? And then content research. So, the audience, brand, and content research. Content that tends to be for subjects that are slightly less exciting or sexy, where they want to develop a story and get the clicks on the website. But today, I think it's the audience part you're probably going to be more interested in,
mm.
because twice as many women as men seem to have that final say when it comes to choosing the scope of a project or the finishings of a renovation, for example. So, as much as we might be difficult to understand, it's often good to try to get into the mind of your customer. And I suppose women are often your
Yeah.
customers if you're doing renovations. So, yeah.
It's a really interesting point, and I'm glad you're on the show because quite often when we're in a sales situation or we're doing an estimate for a family, I'm thinking about a renovation contractor in my mind, but perhaps even a builder, general contractor, even a handyman.
Mhm.
We come to the house or we come to the property. We're talking to two people. Let's say they're a couple in a traditional family. There's a man and a woman, and I think that the man is the decision maker, and he
Mhm.
might be the person who has the voice out loud, but the key influencer who might in some cases be quieter. Um, the reason I'm being cautious is because in my family, my wife's not quiet when the contractor shows up, but so she can't hear me doing this interview now. I'll deal with that later. But there's always, it doesn't matter which account, there's a decision maker and there's an influencer. Both of them are very important.
Yeah.
And when I leave the room, when I go do the estimate and I say, I'll get that back to you, both of those people actually make the decision. And
Mhm.
quite often the woman has a lot of influence, a
Mhm.
lot of say into what's actually going to happen, who's going to get chosen, and how this project's going to happen. Correct?
Yeah, indeed. So the Federation of Master Builders did a study about 5 or 6 years ago that proved your point there. Yeah, that women are twice as likely to have that final say. So yeah, it's worth
Yeah.
to see where they hang out and the kind of things that they look at and the language that they're speaking. Yeah.
Do you just because we're talking about women having the final say, do you
Hmm.
think that they also have the first say? For instance, I hate this kitchen. I hate our patio. We need a new roof, etc.
I think it does depend in what particular item, whereabouts in the house you're looking, and it does depend maybe whether they're the key cook or not. So for a
Mm,
kitchen,
right.
who's going to spend most of their time there? Who is the one that's going to get most frustrated by it?
Yeah.
Who's the one that's going to get upset if it's broken? Is it who's the chef in the house? Is that driven by a female or is that driven by a male? Or are there
Yeah.
two females living in that house, two males living in that
Yeah.
house? So I think it's coming down to that point of pain, isn't it? Who's going to identify it as a need? The roof, that's a different kind of kettle of fish. Who wants to keep a dry house? Those might be less emotional decisions. Nevertheless, you're still often talking to two buyers when it comes to who to choose. Um,
Mm,
and part of that, I think the choice is often put down not to just that logical cost and time decision, so to cost, to budget, but to the service and that kind of emotional connection, I think, as well, sometimes when there's decisions as to who to go with, not just
Yeah.
who's available, but who do you want in your environment? Who do you trust in your environment? Yeah.
Trust is a big one. Yeah. So what do you know from your research that you could pass on to this worldwide group of builders, contractors, renovators, maintenance, service technicians? What can we learn from the research you've done?
Well, some of it might actually be possibly doing your own research, not just things that I might have published, but in terms of trying to maybe hang out in the sort of space that they might be hanging out and chatting and having conversations. So you could be talking about going to a showroom for a bottom showroom, for example, but I appreciate it looks a little bit stalkerish and you don't necessarily want to be there all the time.
So you mean going to a showroom where they're buying lighting fixtures or plumbing fixtures and then listening to the conversations?
That can be a great way. That's what we call ethnographic research, sort of listening to somebody in their habitat to a certain extent, because you can't necessarily go across the threshold and go into their house and listen to the conversations.
Is that what you call retail safari?
That's it. Yes. Well done.
Yeah.
Well done. Yeah. So you can go to more than one of these shops, these merchants and so forth, and kind of keep an ear out for what's going on. And maybe the different types of shop, the different price points, possibly attracts a different type of customer as well. So the conversations and the decision-making process could well be different in one compared to another.
Yeah. Are there other ways that I could do this retail safari? Other ways that I could listen to my buyers? And let me just back us up for a second. The reason we want to listen to our buyers is because they talk in a very specific way. And then when I do my marketing or my sales, my estimates, I want to use that same language. I want to understand their situation better so that they're more comfortable buying from me, right?
Yes, absolutely. We all like to be amongst people that feel a bit like us or seem to understand us, don't we? So hence that language thing, as you say, I think that's really important, really important. A great way of being able to, shall we say, hang out without being too obvious is on social media. And I know a lot of people, it's a bit of a rabbit hole, isn't it? You can get lost by going and listening to social media. But I don't know whether you've heard of the phrase influencers.
Yes.
So there is certain sort of influencers. Lovely. Well, just taking an example of the UK, for example, there's a lady called Alexandra Stedman, and she's got her own business called Frugality, and she does blogs and all sorts of bits and pieces. But she's sort of documenting her life before baby, after the first baby, after the second baby, and her innovation as she's going through it. She was obviously used to fashion and retail and sort of speaking to the world. But to take somebody like that and have a look through their feeds and the comments that are made on those feeds, they're great. I mean, for example, a post that went out later this month, there were 6,000 hits on it. And it's a picture of her in a bit of glass, sitting down, drink with her husband. Yeah. Says, wrangled the two kids to bed, into bed early without a fight. Chink, chink. That was great. And then the comments underneath it, I think, are fantastic. Hi there. Can you tell me what fence primer did you use? Jenny, great choice of fence color. Darker colors look much better. And so she's talking about her life. Yeah. She's having this great time with her husband. But at the same time, people are looking in at her life going, I love your decor. I love your color. Can you tell me what it is?
I see.
Her response to them, yeah, we use cuprinol ducks back. So she's having a lovely evening with her husband, yet she's kind of doing this bit of advertising as well.
At the same time.
Yeah. So the language she's using and her tone are great, but from a contractor's point of view or from a brand's point of view, those are great places to get involved with the conversation. She's just mentioned a company there, Cuprinol. There's other ones where she's like, John Lewis is very smart. That's a big retail store over in the UK, sort of nice middle class, furniture, houseware, clothes, food. She was sitting on the sofa and she's doing this, and John Lewis pop up going, that's great. Can we use you in our campaign? Here's our T's and C's. And they're starting this conversation publicly with her. So it's a great position to be inspired and hear the words, but also get yourself some visibility while you're in there. So,
yeah. So what I'm hearing here is something that we talk about on the show, or I talk about a lot as a coach, is intentionality, doing things on purpose. Because if I just go to Facebook to waste time, which sometimes I do, by the way. Facebook Marketplace, I'll go look for fishing or hunting equipment or something I want to do. And sometimes it's just a waste of time. I know it. But other times, if I go there with the goal of being intentional, I might do something like, because I don't want to waste time, I'll set a timer on my phone. I'll say, set a timer for 15 minutes. And then I'll go look at a specific market or a specific topic, and I'll just read on that so I understand it. Is that a way to get that value from that platform? And then when I do that, what would you suggest that I start at?
Yeah, no, I think that's very wise, setting yourself time limits, because that rabbit hole is huge, isn't it?
Yeah.
And maybe another thing you can do is work out the particular words that are being used in the conversation, or the hashtags. So those things that tend to appear in bold with a little 2 bars, 4 bars to the side of them.
Hashtag,
so the words, so for example, dark interiors or dark decor or outside living or some lovely aspirational thing. Once you've worked out the kind of people that are talking about that, put those tags in, and then you can learn more about the people that are talking about that particular style and get your inspirational ideas as well. There's pictures, the latest trends, often we will go to our contractors and sort of say, right, I've got this idea for a bathroom and I think I want this and I think I want that, but you don't always have it planned out. So to have some of those pictures bookmarked on Pinterest or Instagram or something that are in that theme because you've got the right kind of hashtag, that can be quite impressive, can't it? It shows that you're on their wavelength.
Yeah.
You're using the data.
It's interesting because what I thought of when you were saying that, and remember, I'm a guy, so I'm here to learn. I'm not here to tell. But when I'm hearing you talk about dark interiors or dark colors, in my mind, I like light colors. And so I might choose photos for my site or for my Instagram or for my Facebook that are light colors because I like it. Or let's say I like a nautical theme or some crazy thing like that. But my ideal buyer doesn't. They are telling me through their posts and through their Pinterest board and things like that, they like something else. I should be choosing different images for my site that speaks to my ideal client, not what I like. Is that?
Yeah, that's a great observation. Absolutely.
I wonder if I'm doing it. I don't know.
Well, this is it. Do you want customers to be like you, or is your opportunity better to go for customers that are not quite like you, but are slightly different? But because you have an understanding of what they want, you've got a better opportunity. But
When you get engaged by a client to do research, what's the problem they are coming to you with? What are they trying to solve?
Oh, good question. That's often the place that we start. People often come thinking, I've got a problem with sales. And by the time you've unpicked it, actually, it's not with sales. It could actually be to do with the customer service after people have bought it and things are falling apart. At the moment, though, I would say we did some research last year during the pandemic and afterwards. And over the last year, only 1/3 of businesses have the same customer group as they had before the pandemic. So you've got 2/3 of businesses have had to adapt to a new customer group, to new needs, to new businesses. Yeah. So a lot of requests we're getting at the moment is, goodness gracious, who are my customers at the moment? The things I used to do for them don't have the same traction. The messaging I'm giving to them at the moment, it's not landing. They're not buying the same stuff because our perspectives have changed. So a lot of the stuff is around who is my customer or who is my new customer.
Yeah.
Where can I find them?
One of the challenges right now, the economy and the world goes through cycles all the time. Right now in construction, it's easy to get work.
Yeah.
There is lots of work to be had. One of the challenges we have in construction is finding workers. Can we use any of this marketing insight that you're talking about here to appeal to people to get them to respond to our ads? And I know this wasn't what you and I originally prepared for today, but it makes me wonder, we don't necessarily need more business. We need more people to deliver the business we've sold. Well,
I suppose reputation and brand has got to be a key thing around that, hasn't it? So if you, as a company, don't have a great reputation with your customers, how does that impact on the people that you want to recruit? Do they want to work for a company that is known for being sloppy with its service or delivers rubbish quality or what have you? So You often spend a lot of time doing external marketing, but that has a big impact on the kind of people that you might want to attract. So that's something to consider, is
It's
your reputation, your brand. Yeah.
Yeah. It's interesting you say that, because I did an interview. I have a second show. It's called Cabinet Maker Profit System. And on
Mhm.
that show, we talk to people who build cabinetry or bespoke furniture and things like that. I just use the word bespoke because that's how you say it in England. Here we say custom furniture.
Oh, bespoke. I knew what you were talking about. Yeah.
Yeah, there you go. That was my English accent coming through.
Thank you.
But I interviewed a gentleman named Guy Busey, and Guy Busey is just a rock star in the industry. He turned around a custom bed company. And this is the kind of bed company that makes custom furniture for like an entire Disney resort.
Wow.
So it's not making stuff that you and I might buy. We might buy it, but he's making resort volume, resort quality furniture. But one of the things that he said, because they have the same labor problem, they draw from the same labor pool that anybody else in his neighborhood does.
Mhm.
But he said once they worked on people being proud of their work, the amount of referrals increased internally.
Mhm.
So people are proud to work at his company. And so now when they have the company picnic, they actually open it up to everybody. And he said it's now become like a tour where people who work there are parading people around saying, this is where I work. I'm proud to work here. Do you think you want a job?
Yeah.
And they get more referrals in turn. That's all their employees now come from internal referrals.
Excellent. I think
They have
that's also,
hundreds of employees, by the way, the hundreds.
that's a great example of good company culture as well, isn't it? The
Hmm.
fact that they're all similar values, wanting to work together and so forth. Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, that's interesting. Yeah.
How would I apply the kind of research, our title for this is Women Who Makes the Decisions. How do we start? I guess I'm going to go back to our original topic here. How do we start understanding that and using that language and positioning properly to get the right deals in the right neighborhoods for the right jobs at the right price? How do we start to use your research insights to do that?
I think some of it might be to do with language. The terms that are used when we talk about projects and we talk about the details of the specifications
Yeah,
and things like that. I suppose some of it might be talking in simpler language that is less focused on our industry, or, on the construction industry internally, and more externally, a bit more like a magazine kind of works and how
right.
it's portrayed rather
Very
than,
simple language. Magazines use very simple, simple language.
yeah. And it's not necessarily because women are simple, but they've got plenty of other things to worry about as well as the technical spec of something, a 4x2 by da 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 da.
Yeah.
Probably less interesting. And then you
So
get to the thing about size. Yeah.
So it's interesting. I remember when because everybody had to learn somewhere, but I
Mhm.
was so embarrassed when I started doing any sort of construction work. I didn't know what a soffit was.
They
And
should.
I just didn't know what it was. And
Mhm.
because nobody told me what a soffit was when I was a kid.
Yeah.
And we're talking about, I was probably in grade 11 when I started working as a laborer on a
Yeah.
construction crew. And they're like, go get the wood for the soffits. And I'm like, I know what the wood is. I know what go get means, but I don't know what a soffit is. So I had to say to somebody, can you tell me what a soffit is so I know what we're doing here? And, it's embarrassing. And I wonder how many times we say things as trades professionals, like I'm going to change the condenser unit on the blah, blah, blah. Well, the person has no idea what a condenser unit is or why it's important. So maybe we
Yeah.
need to stop and think about how people are hearing what we're saying and
Yeah.
translate it.
Yeah, because being an expert is fantastic, but if you don't quite understand what that expertise is, it's a bit lost, isn't it?
Mm.
So yeah,
So
being that
where
advisor's got to be a good thing, isn't it? But just having that language to translate it.
So where online, as an example, could I go to figure out the language that women are using to describe their challenges or opportunities, the things they want to change in their home? Where online could I go to find that and figure out where I'm disconnecting from it?
Um, Internet has got to be a good place. I don't necessarily hang around Mumsnet and Facebook groups that sort of complain about issues like that, but I'm sure there are. But you can run specific surveys to ask the questions you want to people. You don't have to hang on the internet. You can say, right, I want to speak to 1,000 consumers, of which half are men and half are women, and let's see what their response is to these different questions I have to them. So that's a way of doing it.
So you can actually go and ask for specific responses from a
Yeah.
2,000 unit population. Who responds to those things?
It's often done by what we call online panels. So there are thousands of people, I mean, that respond, that are willing to give their time in exchange for money or reward or points or so forth, just to give their opinions, just to give their response to survey questions. Yeah. So various shows, I'm quoting UK shows, you won't necessarily understand, Pointless or bits and pieces like that, TV shows. But yeah, you ask 100 people a question and it's their responses to it, or that would be an example for television. But lots of opinion polls. Sometimes we hear it with regard to the government, the exit polls, the opinion polls.
Yeah.
Same principles, but instead of asking those people about their voting intent, you will ask them about their buying intent or their issues around kitchen purchases or their problems in finding a good solution to the damp issue they have in their house or things like that. So yeah, some of it is reading and listening to what you see on the internet, and another part is asking them questions specifically, particularly if you have a new service which isn't common yet. You know, you're sort of
right. It's exactly what I was thinking. So if I do painting, house painting, let's say I do interior house painting, but I see this opportunity with Ligari floors, you know, the kind of, you can make the floor look like concrete, or you can make it look like marble or granite or some swirly pattern, beautiful, pearlized. But I don't know if I should invest in it as a company. Are you saying I can go ask this population of people and see whether this is a thing they even care about?
Yeah.
How do you do that?
There is, okay, I would say come speak to somebody like me. And
I know it's okay. You can actually answer it that way.
Okay, I'm allowed to
just so everybody knows, I said to Jane in the beginning, you're not supposed to sell your services, but I just asked a specific question that I think you answered. So Jane, you're absolved for the next few minutes. Just please, don't make it an infomercial on TV.
No. So if you wanted to understand whether that was worth doing, I would find you a group of people that are most likely to be in the market for purchasing things. So for example, you might say your audience would have a household budget or income of a certain amount, that they are considering doing refurbishment within the next 2 years, for example, and they might be living in an urban area. So for example, if that's likely to be your 3 key areas, I mean, you could get it as narrow as London or something like that, but maybe just think of an urbanite with over £75,000 in household income, likely to do renovation. I will select you people that fit into that category.
Yeah.
And then the questions that we will design together, such as showing them pictures, for example, of the different types of floors. That could be, which do you prefer and why do you prefer it?
Yeah.
And you can put a price point on it. How likely would you to buy it if it was at this price? How unlikely would you be to buy it at this price? And you can do a series of pricing questions. And you would also want to ask them about where they might go for both inspiration in the first instance and where you might go to purchase it at the end. So almost that sales funnel thing, I suppose. The idea is knowing that they've got a problem, knowing that they need to meet it, versus how do they find somebody to meet that, versus how do they make the decision. So it's like you say, bespoke. It's a bespoke survey to you. You can ask all sorts of things. But we would guide you through depending on what you needed to know.
So I'm kind of laughing to myself because instead of guessing as a company, you're saying I can actually pose all the questions I want, invest a little bit of money, and find out the real answer instead of guessing for 5 or 6 years and burning money until we figure it out.
Yes.
Yeah. I hate the smell of burning money. I know what it smells like and I don't like it.
Absolutely. And one would hope that you have a survey back where there will be a couple of questions you go, well, I knew the answer to that. I didn't need a survey. I think great, because that means that the data that we've collected for the whole of the survey is believable. You're going to trust the rest of it. And then some of the other questions, if you kind of get responses, you're going, that feels counterintuitive. That doesn't feel quite right. But the fact that it is also reinforcing your existing knowledge with something that's a bit different, then you've got that confidence also that that's taking you in a different direction and you can go with it. So it takes that emotion, that gut instinct, you can let go of it and make decisions in a different way. But yeah, I mean, data-driven decisions are a big thing these days, aren't they? Particularly the bigger you get, measuring impact, measuring all sorts. So why not give data to your decision making as well as your impact?
Yeah. Would that also work with content marketing? So for example, in your intro, you talked about content marketing. So if I'm running a roofing company or a siding company, and I think I've got to generate some content, but how many times can I say siding goes on the outside of your home? I can only say that so many times. But I would imagine that if I did the right kind of surveys, I would find out what a homeowner wants to know about for the exterior of their home. Is that right?
Yeah. And I don't know, in your market, would there be almost some surprise stories that would prick up the ears of somebody whose attention you want to get? So you would think of what would be a great story to write, perhaps what would be really interesting, and then you almost work backwards and create your questions that help you have agreement or disagreement to the kind of stories that you think would be good for people to hear. So right. It's twofold. One being, as you say, in the first place, what do people want to do? What are their pain points? Where do they go and look for it? Another things being, did you know that X% only put or don't have waterproof cladding on, or something like that? I don't know, something crazy, but something that you would not expect to be a finish for a house, for example. And you might, or X% of consumers thought that you could put egg yolk on the outside of your house to keep it watertight. I don't know, something silly like that. And you kind of go, what? But then there's a lot more sense in the rest of the article, because you're talking real information and useful information
in their language. In their language.
Yeah,
so when we come to all of these things and we talk about women as the decision makers, how do we go about finding out how to align ourselves better with the woman as the decision maker or the influencer in a job? What's the takeaway message here to go back to the big question that men, I'll be honest, I will speak on behalf of all men, if I might, Jane. We don't know what we're doing. How do I align my language and offering so that the woman chooses us as the contractor?
Listen rather than talk.
Wait, hold on a second. Let me say something.
Go on.
So listen rather than talk.
Well, so for example, doing your Google search, listening to what's being said out there already on your Instagram, for example, on your Facebook things, listening to the way people are talking, reading what's going out there.
Yeah.
And I suppose when you have your interactions, when you go to a site meeting, when you go to a pitch, that kind of thing, you don't always need to have that solution just said to you. You kind of almost need to listen to what people think the problem is in the first place before you then talk about how you can help them.
You know, that's very... Sorry, I just did that, Jane. I cut you off. I'm sorry.
Forgive me.
I'm going to blame it on the lag on the internet. But isn't that how a doctor does things? A doctor will ask questions and diagnose before they tell you what to do.
Yes, absolutely. And the chap that used to run HubSpot, is it Mark Roberg? Robert. He's written some great books on sales, and he was asked who is his most inspirational salesperson, and he said his consultant, his doctor, because they spend all of their time listening to you, defining what the problem is, and then they generally give you the solution or sell you the solution. So yes, absolutely, that is a great comparison. Doctors spend an awful lot of time asking questions, diagnosing the problem before they get to the solution. Same idea, isn't it? Because you don't want to buy something you don't need. You've got to understand what you're buying is what you need. You're solving a problem. And that could be to have something really, really pretty on your wall. If it's a dull wall, that is a good solution, for example.
I need it to be a pretty wall, or I need it to be a feature wall.
Yeah.
And I think I'm just painting the house and that cost is the only concern and I want to keep it cheap for you.
Yeah. You listen to that conversation and then you hear that actually you might be more prepared to flex on something if it gave you a different feel or a different look as a result. And that's you upselling, I suppose, isn't it? But don't always assume the worst. Don't always assume the best, I suppose. Just listen.
Yeah, no, I know. I've been guilty of that, of assuming that a conversation is going to go in a negative way. I had a client once call me and say, and it was a female client. She owned a furniture store, believe it or not. And it was a very high-end furniture store. And my nickname for the store to her, I called it the hockey players' wives store. And she and I joked around a lot, and she's like, "Why do you call it that?" I'm like, "Because this stuff's so expensive. The only people who can afford to shop here are hockey players' wives. Because hockey players, like you would call footballers' wives, right? It's just inordinate amounts of money, or as we
Right.
call hockey socks full of cash. That's a
Okay.
Canadian saying, right? So, but she would often say that her people have to listen very, very carefully to what is happening
Yeah.
in the family situation, even though the husband might be saying, we need a new bed or we need a new kitchen set or whatever they're selling. It was the woman who's driving the whole decision and who had said, this Saturday, we're going down there to do this.
Hmm.
The husband just suddenly took over when he got there.
Yeah, and that's another interesting one. Who do you speak to for the final decision? Where does your eyes go to? Who does? Yeah.
Who are you
Anyway,
talking
that's
to?
a personal story, and that'll keep me going for hours. Don't worry about
Yeah. Yes, we can offend people with that. Jane, thank you very much for giving us these insights. It's interesting. And so you've spent 20 years doing research on consumer behavior?
And business purchasing, business behavior. Yeah, yeah. A bit more than 25, but I'll let you have that.
Say,
Yeah.
say 20.
Okay, 20. Okay,
20 plus years. Yeah, yeah. If somebody wants to find out more about the kind of research you do and how that research could help them do what they need to do, how did we find you in the world?
Brilliant. Well, we've got a website, of course, called SAPIOresearch.com, SAPIO, as in intelligence, SAPIO. SAPIOresearch.com, and LinkedIn. You can find me there, Jane Hales. Simple as that, Jane Hales on LinkedIn. Twitter, don't tend to use that so much, but yeah, Jane V Hales on Twitter. But happy to answer questions, to help. And we've got some case studies on the website if that helps people as well. Some download forms to help with particular insight techniques as well. But yeah, more than happy to chat and offer some suggestions and ideas.
Can I offer what my takeaway is from today's interview?
Please do.
I have to do a better job of listening before I talk.
Oh, I hope I haven't offended you. That wasn't my intention.
No. First, good luck trying to offend me. Second, my takeaway is that if I want to have the female client or the female influencer, and really any client, it doesn't matter what client it is, I have to listen very, very carefully to what they say.
Mm-hmm.
And sometimes, because I've been doing this a long time, I already jump to the I knows. I know we're going to do this. I know we're going to do that. I know we're going to create this report. I know we're going to put this system in place. And it's just because it's my job. I've been doing it for 20 plus years, as you so politely said. I know, but I've got to take the I know out of my language because I don't know what's important to the person. I do find though, and I wonder if you find this as well in conversation, that let's say I'm having a conversation with you. Let's use a home renovation example as an example, and we used paint before, and then we talked about a feature wall. If we're having a conversation about painting the home, blah, 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 and it's all about paint, but then you say something like, I did bring back that beautiful, what do you call it, hand-woven rug from Peru.
Mm-hmm.
That has nothing to do with the paint and the timing of the painting and what kind of paint we're going to use, but you threw in that random comment. I could blow past it and blow past the real opportunity, which is you need to feature this beautiful tapestry. I think it's called a tapestry from Peru.
Yeah, absolutely. And then you're having a different level of conversation then, aren't you? Because you're probably speaking about something that's very personal to that individual as well. They brought it back from holiday. They have emotions, they have memories related to that. And that room probably feel that much more special because you've managed to incorporate it and given it a place. Yeah.
So that's why I said I need to listen more. And I hope everybody who's listening to the show has, everybody has their own takeaways, but maybe that's the takeaway here for selling to women or selling to a specific group or to a specific decision maker is listen more and find creative ways. I mean, you call it a retail safari, find creative ways to listen more. Go to the websites that people use, go to other chat groups they're in, listen to them in other places.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely.
I love it.
Curious. Be curious.
Excellent. Well, curiosity is how I found you, Jane. You and I are both in the same business club, and we're at chapters in totally different parts of the world.
Indeed, yes. Yeah.
And I'm so thankful for that. Thank you.
But thank you. Thank you very much for inviting me. It's been a pleasure. And I'm
Have a
looking
great.
forward to hear what your story is afterwards.
Yeah.
Story time with Dom.
Did you hear some of the story times with Dom?
Yeah, I'm intrigued to know what you're going to finish with this one.
We'll see. We'll see. All right, Jane, thank you so much. Have a great day, and we'll talk to you soon.
Thank you. And you. Thank you.
Thank
Bye-bye.
you.